Hi, my name is John Messina, and I am the host of the show Hey Coach. As we get close to baseball season, spring training here in Port St. Lucie, where the Mets are ready to start, I have a show today where we're bringing in two baseball experts. I'm saying that very nicely, fellas, here. Okay, first of all, my good friend Rob Murphy, former Major League pitcher, working together in Martin County now. Long night last night.
Yes, we had a long one, that's for sure.
Even with a win.
Right.
With a win. And Mark Tomasic, who is executive editor of TC Palm, former journalist over in Cincinnati, covered the Reds, and that's how you met Rob. And we have a real good friend in common, our former superintendent, Mike Lannon.
We sure do.
Right.
Great to be here, Coach.
Thank you so much. We're going to talk about baseball. Okay, I know there's a lot of things going on. I know this area, once the Mets come in, it's a different area. We have people coming in from all over the country, not just from New York, but from different places. But Mark, first to you, a little bit about your ties to baseball.
Well, I grew up a baseball fan in New Jersey, and my first ball game that my grandfather and dad took me to was to a Cardinals game in the Polo Grounds in New York. And that happened to be Stan Musial's last game in New York.
Wow.
And I became hooked on the Cardinals because of that. So I've been a lifelong baseball fan and learned rather quickly that I could not pitch as well as Rob Murphy, couldn't coach here as well as the coach. And so what did I do? I became a sports writer. And I went into journalism in college and launched a career in journalism my whole career, starting out in sports.
Mark mentioned the Polo Grounds, Rob. I mean, for people that have not seen the old films of that, can you explain a little bit about those dimensions? Because that's one of a kind.
Right. I mean, when you think about the typical baseball setup, 300, 330 feet to each of the foul poles, right, and maybe 400 in center, right, field. Well, the Polo Grounds was 400 and then another 400. And it really was set up for polo, and that's, it was named appropriately. And to squeeze a baseball game into a place like that made for some very interesting plays.
And the famous home run that Bobby Thompson hit in 1951, the Giants beat the Dodgers in the playoff games to go to the World Series. That didn't even travel 300 feet.
That's right.
Okay, I mean, that wouldn't have got out of most high school parks. And if you watch that film, the outfielder is waiting back to get it, and there was an overhang, if I'm not mistaken, out there, and that's where the ball landed. So again, you picture not even 300 feet to left field. So it's a different time. Mark, just the changes to not just the newspaper industry, but how the newspaper industry, or you can't even say newspapers anymore, how they cover sports now.
Well, it has changed quite a bit, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. The internet changed everything. And unfortunately, the profession was too slow to adapt, especially on the business model. And so for years, newspapers were giving their content away for free. And as a result, folks who were paying for print subscriptions started to think, why should I pay for print when I can get the information on free on the internet and on my phone? So it was unfortunate that the industry just adapted too slowly. And not so much the journalists, they adapted quickly, but it was the business side and the business model. And as a result of that, advertising started to decline, and you started to see companies, the larger corporations that own newspapers, start to make some pretty poor decisions, slashing staff, and at the same time, raising rates for advertisers as well as subscribers. When you look back on it, a pretty poor combination where your staff is declining, the quality of content is declining, but the rates are increasing. So a lot of mistakes, but I still see a lot of dedication in the profession and in the industry, and I see some real hope. Places like the Okeechobee News, which is doing some remarkable local journalism. And so I'm hopeful that as things evolve, the industry will right itself and come back in a different form.
Rob, as somebody who played in the major leagues for a number of years, have you seen the way the reporters cover the game change from when you were playing to now?
Well, back in the day, in Cincinnati, we had a handful of beat writers. And then-
Explain what a beat writer is.
Well, beat writers with you all the time.
Okay.
And that's their beat. They're with you, morning, noon, and night.
They go on the planes with you?
Sometimes they would travel with
Okay.
us, but they were at the away games also, and you got to know the guys, especially in Cincinnati. Between the Post and the Inquirer, you became friendly with these people, and it made for a good relationship. And then I know one of my very best friends, Gene McLean, who was writing for the Lexington Herald Leader at the time. When I got traded to the Red Sox, he was the first phone call I got, and he said, "Now listen, you may not have the same friends up there that they think." So in Boston, I think we had 72 beat writers, because it
72?
wasn't just the Boston Red Sox, it's the New England Red Sox. I mean, you got 7 states that are really following that team, with their own blood, sweat, and tears. So that is, that even in the same day and age, you saw a change between city to city. But now I know, having coached around here at the high school level since 2011, I've seen how coverage has changed. Between, seemed like we saw Dennis out at the ballparks, all the time, with baseball, because he's such a great fan of the sport. And now, it's you call in the results, as opposed to having a conversation with one of the writers. And then that's how you get to know people, is by talking to them, not texting them or emailing them some numbers.
Right.
Well, so true. And I should mention that, I became the editor at TC Palm Treasure Coast in 2002. We had a staff of 150 journalists. And today, I'm retired. I retired in 2016. But today, I know that staff is 30 journalists.
Wow.
Just an amazing change. So you think about what Rob and Coach were saying. We used to have a sports staff of 15 or 16 people.
And I know as an athletic director, I want to get fair coverage for all my sports. And sometimes, and I'm not blaming any of the reporters, because they're getting their orders from higher up, it was high school football first, high school football second, and high school football third. Now, if I got a real good girls basketball team or softball team, and we're playing during spring football season, and it's hard because, I got to try to placate everybody, and, you got to be fair with that. But, that's what it is in Florida. That's where, high school football is first, second, and third on the agenda there.
Well, I couldn't agree more. We learned a long time ago that prep sports was a secret sauce for newspapers. It may not get the most readership, but it got loyal readership, intensely
good
loyal
word.
readership.
Yeah.
And you think about the moms and dads, the grandmas and grandpas especially, who would clip those stories out, save them, mail them to people. Now even online, sending those out electronically. And so it was a very loyal, intense readership. And prep sports was not only smart to do journalistically, but it was right to do for the community.
And another big change, and you guys know this better than me, is the spring training sites. If you go back, 20, 30 years, they were all in Florida, or most of them in Florida, most on the East Coast. Why did that change? Why did they change? Why did they move to spring training sites?
Well, I think a lot of it, as usual, had to do with money.
Right.
It used to be spring training was the teams came down to train, and if that was about it. But now they're seeing that as a revenue opportunity.
That's what I was trying
And
to get
so,
at, yeah.
just like at the major league parks, it becomes more than baseball. It becomes an entertainment opportunity
That's
and a chance to sell all sorts of things. I have to say, I'm shocked by it, disappointed by it. But you look at what's happening, just one example, the St. Louis Cardinals down here in Jupiter. Do you know they charge to go to batting practice and spring training? Spring training, and they're charging to go to batting practice. If I buy a ticket, and that ticket is going to cost $40
And they're pretty
for
expensive,
a reserve
yeah.
seat in the last row, first base side,
Wow.
I cannot get into batting practice. I've tried. I've bought the ticket, and they wouldn't let me in.
Wow.
And it's $5 extra to go to batting practice, $30 extra if you want a VIP batting practice experience. But the thing that's just amazing is they would not do this if people weren't paying. And so enough people are doing it. That's what shocks me.
And Rob, I know well, you must at spring training at Dodgertown, and what a family atmosphere that was, where the dugouts with no covering on them, people sitting on the hills. I remember going to many games there, and it was so relaxing, you know. I mean, from your perspective, where did you train when you were with Cincinnati?
We trained in Tampa.
Yeah.
The Reds, actually, their last year in Tampa was my last year.
Right.
No, it was my next to last year.
Right.
And they've been there like 51 years.
Wow.
And they got a better deal in Plant City. So my last year with the Reds was the first year in Plant City, 1988. It's not even in a different county. They went from one edge of Hillsborough County to the other. Didn't even leave. But there was some money thrown at the organization, and they moved, you know, like I say, intra-county. Now that facility in Plant City, I happened to get a good sense of it, what's happening there last spring when my daughter's Scarlet softball team played games there on the backfields, which used to be where the minor league teams would work out. And they've shortened up the fences, and they've put some playground facility in, and the big ballpark's over back in the backdrop.
I know it has become a money-making industry. It has become a corporate industry. But the one thing I could say from personal experience is how great the Mets and the St. Lucie Mets and Paul Tagliaferri and his whole crew over there with us when we hosted the state baseball tournament, you know, from 2010 to 2015. Paul was just great. He says, "John, it's your stadium." And we had a lot of fun doing that. And I think that put Port St. Lucie on the map throughout the state. You know, of course, it's always here for the Mets, but I remember kids coming down and they had their shirts on, and they must have had it from day one. It said "Road to Port St. Lucie," so it kind of made us feel good, and the Mets were so cooperative on that. All right, so that's been the good news about baseball.
Yes.
Okay, I know we have to talk about this because it has bothered me. I know it has bothered you. There's no other way of saying it, but there was cheating going on. There was a cheating scandal going on. The Houston Astros were totally involved. They have been penalized. The manager was fired. The general manager was fired. They got fined $5 million. I think worse than all that is going to be the reputation going through the years. Now, Mark, you got a little insight of, I'm not saying cheating, but going back and the way of manipulating different things.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, the Astros scandal is shocking, and yet sign stealing has been going on in the major leagues since 1900. It's documented. There was a catcher for the Philadelphia Phillies in 1900 named Morgan Murphy. I don't know if he was Rob's relative or not.
Must have been.
Probably a
Must
good
have been.
chance.
Did you
right?
play with him? No.
That was my early years.
Your early years, okay?
But it's really amazing. This was 1900, and they're playing in the Baker Bowl in Philadelphia. And this Morgan Murphy was a reserve catcher, hardly played. So they'd put him out in a clubhouse in center field. And he had binoculars, and they had set up a wiring system from the clubhouse in center field along.
This is in 1900.
In 1900, and that wire went to the third base coaching box, and the third base coach would be on the coaching box, and Morgan Murphy had his binoculars, and he would look for signs from the catcher, and when he got the signs, he would hit a buzzer, and 1 was for fastball, 2 was for a curve, and 3 was for a changeup. And the coach would feel the vibrations under his feet, and then he would give the sign. If he felt 1, it was a fastball. If he felt 2, a curve, and so on. And then he would relay the signs to the batter. And the reason they got caught is that a opposing third base coach was in the coaching box one day, and he happened to get his cleats tangled up in the turf. And he went to pull out and pulled the wires out. And they started to take the wires, and they saw it got the center field. So it's been, you mentioned Bobby Thompson early on, and that 1951 great home run.
Right.
Chances are they were stealing the signs. They found out later that Herman Franks, another backup catcher, was in center field at the Polo Grounds and was relaying signs to Leo DeRocher. The Giants were way behind the Dodgers that year. And it was after they figured out, the Giants did, how to set up the system, that they caught the Dodgers and then beat them in the playoffs. So it's unfortunate. It shouldn't be going on, but it has been going on as long as the game has been here.
Rob, as a former Major League player, and I'm wording this right, your opinion about this whole situation?
Having been involved in Major League Baseball for a long time and minor league baseball also,
right.
every dugout is looking for an edge. And that's just the
Right.
nature of the
Okay.
game. So pitchers that hold their glove in different orientation with different pitches, hitters are looking for that. And that's always been fair game.
Right.
And sometimes a catcher will be in a particular stance and you can see the signs that he's relaying to the pitcher.
Correct.
Or you can just see them, where a coach, if they're closer to the foul line than not, they can see the signs. And that's always been fair game. My opinion here is that if their teams are using electronics, they've crossed a line here. And it's something, it's not just getting the word from point A to point B to point C, but it's, at this point, you know, there had to be a coaxial cable or Ethernet line
Yes.
brought behind the Astros dugout, and someone from the staff of the stadium had to know about it. And this is why it blew up. I mean, between, just not just Mike Fiers saying what he did,
Right.
but there was a trail of evidence of all this. And at this point, I know that the investigation took a while with Houston, and we know there's an ongoing investigation with other teams, and most likely led by the Red Sox. And you know there's another shoe or two to drop here. But as Mark was talking about, the old wire to the third base box, I'm thinking Western Union, we could have monetized that really well. You know what I mean?
You really could have. And you know what? I agree with what Rob is saying. And the way I look at it is there's a difference between gamesmanship and cheating. And cheating is when you take electronic devices and other means to figure out the signs. Gamesmanship is when you have a coach with a lot of experience, a player with a lot of experience and intelligence who can just watch the signs and see for himself what they are and figure them out. And that's one thing. But to use electronic means is cheating.
And the advantage, okay, if you know what pitch is coming, it's a tremendous advantage. I mean, on a high school level, please, if there's a fastball coming all day, our guys will do very well if we know it's coming.
Right.
I remember I was up at the Met Stadium about 10 years ago, and Carlos Beltran was rehabilitating there. And he was in the cage, and he had the machine turned up. It was 100 miles an hour, and he's killing it. So I was talking to him afterwards. He says, I'll adjust. Major league hitters are going to adjust. Now, the other thing, too, is if you know the catcher signs or the opposing team signs when they're stealing, what are we doing, Rob? We're going with pitch outs, right?
It's the same thing. It's the same concept, but in a different facet of the
Right.
game. And that's always been fair game.
Okay.
And, a few years ago when I've seen the video of when the foul ball hit Yadier Molina in the chest protector and the ball stuck.
Right.
Well, that's from some foreign material being on his chest
Right.
protector. Okay, so that's, the rules say no foreign substance on the baseball. Well, it's getting there somehow. And that's, that gets policed to just enough of a level where it doesn't intrude on the integrity of the game. And this is
Who is the pitcher years ago that had a reputation for scuffing the ball? And the opposing manager told the umpire, go out and check him. And he went out and he says, empty your pockets. I got nothing in my pockets. And then what happened?
It was Joe Negro, and his emery board
His
fluttered
emery
out
board
and,
fell out.
and fell to the ground.
And how embarrassing. Or Sammy Sosa with the cork bat, when he hit the bat and all the little marbles came out, or the
Right.
corks came out of those
Right.
things. But this, and Rob, again, you know this, being in the clubhouse, they're told not to do this. I think that's what the commissioner, and I think that's what the public outcry is. They were told not to do it, and they did it, and they make it matters worse.
Well, it's like going back to the Pete Rose situation. There is Rule 21 on every locker room door in English and Spanish. You cannot bet on baseball, and that's why Pete was subject to the harsh penalty he got. Steroids, when they started to
Right.
rear their ugly head in baseball, there weren't any rules in place. So how much can you penalize guys? And now there are rules in place, and guys get the just punishment, and the game is cleaned up pretty much. This is, again, another area where I know the Red Sox were warned a couple years ago with their Apple Watches.
Explain that. What were they doing with the watches?
Well, I don't know exactly, but they were relaying information. So that if there's information coming through the game feed into the locker room, somebody could little voice note to one of the coaches in the dugout, and all of a sudden you've got some added information that is only coming electronically. And so they were given, not even a slap on the wrist, just a verbal warning.
Right.
But this takes it pretty far here, and with Mark's research, seeing how far back things go. But this is Rob Manfred's moment now. This is his moment to make sure that this is taken care of and put to bed the right way, and it's only going to come after a thorough investigation.
And is it taken care of? What do you guys think? Is it done?
No, it's not done.
No, it's not.
No.
It's more. I think once the first spring training comes, it's going to be bad. It was bad today when some of the Astros apologized. Or so, how much do we really understand it? It's going to be bad the first time they play the Yankees. I don't know if they play the Dodgers this year. Somebody asked me today, should they keep the World Series championship? I don't know.
It's a great question.
I don't know
the answer.
I don't know the answer. I think you got to have everything come out. And as you said in the car on the way over, there's more people besides the players and the coaches that knew about this. If they fired a general manager, that means there was a bunch of staffers involved too. So sooner or later, when those staffers leave these organizations, people are going to talk. Just like now, politically, when people leave the White House, they're talking left and right.
Right.
So, but let's talk about a few good things in a few moments we have left. New baseball rules, okay? One of them is a 3-batter minimum in the major leagues. Rob, can you explain that?
In an effort to speed up the game, when you look at really what causes a time stretch of the game
Right.
is changing pitchers
Right.
all the time. Back in my day, there were 4 or 5 relief pitchers. Now teams have 7 or 8. And that means you can change more pitchers because you have more guys available. So that can add minutes to each inning as you get, past the middle of the game. So now they're going to have a pitcher come in the game. He's got to either face 3 batters or finish the inning. I don't have a big problem with that. Really, it's going to eliminate some lefty specialists.
That would come in for one batter.
For one batter. That's
Okay.
going to be the role that's going to be impacted the most. And how's it going to impact? We're only going to know at the end of this season, going into next season, how it really has affected guys. Because a lot of left-handed pitchers have a job to come in and get one guy out. That really wasn't my job when I was coming out of the bullpen in Cincinnati, Boston. So that wouldn't have affected me. I know that. But there are plenty of guys that is their
But you
role.
pitch multiple innings.
Right, all the time. I mean, it's,
What was the longest you went in relief?
I think 3 1/3.
That's
so,
unheard of
So that's
now.
pitching in 4 separate innings.
That's unheard of
yes.
now, right?
And able to
Yeah.
pitch out of relief over 100 innings in both the American League and National League. That hasn't been done too many times. And it'll never happen again, especially for a left-hander.
That's another proposed rule, like the 3-batter minimum's in. But this is proposed to change the playoffs. And again, I'm always under the impression, if things are going good, don't touch them. I thought the playoffs been great. The one-game playoffs been great. Now they want to put more teams in, which is fine. But I am kind of mystified that they want to have, and I don't know the whole thing. I read it 3 times today. I still don't understand it. Where the first 2 teams get byes, and then the 3rd or 4th place team get to pick their opponent. Now, Rob, if you play for Pete Rose, what would he say if, say, I'm just throwing this out, the Milwaukee Brewers said, I want to play Pete Rose's Reds? What will happen to that first batter?
It's going to be, his cleats won't be in the ground too long,
Right.
that's for sure.
But I mean, why would you do that? Again, you want to say, well, did they play the series before? And how they're using their pitching staff, and also, Mark, they want to make it a selection show. Again, and we brought this up in the beginning of the show. This is about money. They want to try to copy the NCAA selection show. The only problem with the NCAA is you got people all over the nation that don't know if your team's getting in. This one, they're getting in. You just don't know who you're playing, right?
Yeah, it's true. And it's about money. It's also about baseball is trying to reach a younger audience, trying to reach an audience they don't have right now. And I think they should try to do that, but the means they're doing it by with this proposal is not going to work. And you know, I'm also against an expanded postseason. I think right now we're seeing mediocrity rewarded, and it's going to continue to be rewarding, or to be rewarded. 7th place qualifies for the postseason.
Well, they're trying to copy this March Madness, okay? But it's different from March Madness because you have 68 different entities. And you know, what was it, a few years ago? Loyola Chicago, right?
Yes.
They made it to the Final Four. That's the biggest thing for their school, for their area, okay? And again, I'm picking on the Milwaukee Brewers now. Say they get in with 5 games under 500. That's not gonna, you know, really make that, but they're trying to make, I like the expanded teams, but you know, what's basketball? They get in 16, get in 8 and 8 and 8.
It seems like everyone does.
Everyone does. Hockey, everyone does.
Right.
You know, you want to get in there. We remember the time back when there was 2 8-team divisions, right? National League had 8, American League had 8. Yeah, 1 champ.
Right.
Right? I mean, Rob, we have dealt this in high school. Okay? We're dealing with
Yes.
it now.
New districting.
That there's new districting. And I'm saying this, and you know, we just started our season this week. I don't have a clue how we're going to get into playoffs if we don't win the district, because they take it on a point value system that has to do with your opponent's strength of schedule. This is high school, okay? If I got to look up my opponent's strength of schedule, I'm going to find the weakest teams with the best records, if that's how I'm going to get in. And do you get more points for beating a good team with a lousy record, right? Wouldn't you rather play a good team with a lousy record? Or you know, it's taken away head-to-head stuff. It's taken away geographical stuff. You know, as we're counting down here in the last minute, I told you the show's going to go fast.
Yes.
Okay, I'm looking forward to great baseball season. Anyhow, I mean, it's wonderful. We have spring training in Florida. I wish we had more teams down here, but at least now with the opening of the parks in West Palm and Jupiter, and also, you know, here with the Mets here and the Braves up in Orlando, at least on this side of Florida, we have Major League Baseball again. But I'd really like to thank you guys. Okay, we got out of practice today, so that's good.
Write my note.
Make a note on that. Mark, thank you so much for
Thank
coming,
you.
and thank you for all what you did with TC Palm. I know it was a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
Big guy, we got to go practice tomorrow.
That's right, I'll see you there.
So I want to thank everybody to another edition of Hey Coach.